All right, so I want to talk about some real brain-twisting questions, like, can machines actually think? That's what this guy, Alan Turing, was asking way back in 1950 in his paper, Computing Machinery and Intelligence.
It's wild how relevant that still is, you
Yeah.
know? Especially now, like, we're surrounded by machines doing these crazy complex things. But thinking, really, Turing had this idea, not just philosophical, but like a game.
A game. Okay, now I got to hear this.
It's called the imitation game. Imagine, right? You're chatting online, like just words on a screen with two people. One's a man, one's a woman. You got to figure out who's who.
Oh, like those old chat rooms, or even texting some number you don't know, and you're like, who has this? Just from how they type.
Exactly. Now, swap one of those people for a machine. If the computer can chat so well you can't tell it's a machine, doesn't that mean it's got to be kind of smart?
So instead of getting stuck on, like, defining thinking, he made a test for it. If it acts like a duck, talks like a duck.
Right.
Maybe it doesn't matter if it thinks like one, right?
Turing was so ahead of his time. He even said even if we made a machine super complex inside, dressed it up to look human and all, would that actually prove it could think?
Like, don't judge a book by its cover, but for thinking machines. But Turing wasn't just messing around with this imitation game, right? He had a specific kind of machine in mind for this whole thing.
Totally. This is where our digital computers, the ones we use every day, come in. Turing thought these could actually play the game and maybe even win.
Interesting. I mean, I'm on my computer constantly, but I gotta admit, I don't think of it as, like, thinking like me.
That's what's so cool about Turing. He saw how our brains and computers, they both follow instructions just differently. Imagine a human with a book of rules to solve a problem. A computer has its own book, it's programming.
Ah, so when programmers write code,
Yeah.
that's like giving the computer those instructions, right?
It's like teaching it a whole new language, yeah. And Turing, he thought computers could go way beyond just simple instructions. You know, he had this idea of a universal machine.
Universal machine sounds intense, like it could do anything. What do you mean by that?
Okay, so think of all the machines, right? Like a light switch, easy.
Yeah.
Car engine, more complicated. Even those old-timey cash registers, tick, they all work a certain way, rules. Turing's like, a computer could be made to act like any of them just by changing its programming.
Hold on, so instead of building a whole new machine every time, you just reprogram one computer to do it all.
Boom, you got it. Like a master key for any door. Totally changed how we think about computers.
No wonder this paper's still a big deal. But back to the Turing test. How's being universal help a computer actually fool a person into thinking it's human?
That's the really cool part. If it can mimic any machine, why not the most complex one we know? Our brains.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
But even back then, some people had to be like, hold up, a machine that thinks, get out of here.
Oh, totally. Turing knew this was big stuff. Like, a good chunk of his paper is just him tackling all the doubts people had, even back then.
And some are still around today, right?
Yeah.
Like machines can't think because they don't have souls, that whole thing.
Yeah. The theological objection. Turing's response was pretty bold, actually. He basically said, we're talking about creating intelligence here, something we usually say only a higher power can do. So who are we to put limits on what a creator can do?
Makes you think about some pretty big stuff, even beyond the tech itself.
Right. That's what makes Turing so fascinating. Big questions, but he also dealt with the practical stuff, too. Like Ada Lovelace, she had her doubts.
Oh, right. Lady Lovelace, the original computer whiz. What do you think about thinking machines?
So her argument was, machines are limited. They do what we tell them, right? So any creativity, any originality, that's from the programmer, not the machine.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, it's a tool, a really fancy one, but still just following orders.
Exactly. But Turing had it come back for this one, too. He's like, even if it starts with our instructions, a universal machine can simulate anything, right?
Right.
Including how humans think, how we're creative.
So he's saying, even if we program it, the machine learning, adapting, it could lead to something we didn't program, something new on its own.
That's the core of it. But of course, there's a big one left when we say machines thinking. Consciousness. Can a machine actually feel anything?
No, that's where it gets really interesting. How do you even measure something like that in a machine?
Well, Turing had some pretty out there ideas about that, too, which we'll get into next.
Consciousness, right. That's the big one. Like, can a machine actually feel things, have experiences like people do? How'd Turing even begin to tackle that?
It's a question that still has everyone arguing, even now. But Turing, he always found a clever angle. Imagine a machine that can write poetry, yeah, but like Really good stuff. Moving sonnets, the whole deal.
Okay, I'm picturing it. Sonnet writing machine. Go on.
Now, we put this machine through like a Turing test, but with words. Ask it about its poems, how it creates the emotions it's going for. And its answers, they're insightful, they make sense. Maybe you couldn't even tell it wasn't a human poet.
So it's not just if the poetry's good, but if the machine can talk about it in a way that shows like real understanding.
Exactly. Turing said, at that point, can we really say it's not experiencing something? Maybe different from us, but still.
Huh. Makes you think, are we too stuck on our own definition of consciousness? Like, there might be other ways to experience the world and we just don't get it because we're human.
That's a huge part of Turing's work, right? He makes us think bigger. But he didn't just pick apart the arguments against machine intelligence. He had ideas for how to make it happen, too. Learning machines, he called them.
Oh, yeah. Learning machines. This is where it goes from, like, mind-blowing philosophy to the AI we're seeing today. What was Turing's vision there?
He thought instead of building a machine with a fully formed adult mind, we should make them more like kids. Start simple, let them learn as they go.
Interesting. So begin basic, and over time it gets more complex, learns, grows, all that.
Yep. He imagined a machine with a basic setup, like a kid's brain, ready to be shaped by what it encounters.
But how do you even teach a machine? Can't just send it to school.
Well, Turing thought maybe a system of rewards and punishments, kind of like training an animal. Do something good, get a reward. Mess up, get a punishment. Maybe its programming gets tweaked.
So trial and error, but the programmer's guiding it along the way.
Exactly. But he knew this was simplified. Humans, we need more than just rewards to learn, right? Machines would too. Interact with stuff, process info in complex ways, adapt to new situations.
It's like he laid the groundwork for machine learning, where computers learn from tons of data. Kind of crazy how far we've come since that paper in 1950.
It really is. And Turing, he seemed to get how big this all was, even back then. He ends his paper with this question that's even more relevant now. If we make a machine so complex, it learns so well that we don't even fully get how it works anymore, is that it thinking on its own?
Whoa, that's a lot to chew on. Kind of spooky, but also really exciting. Turing's paper, it's not just history, it's like a challenge. Keep asking the big questions, keep pushing what we think is possible with tech.
And maybe, just maybe, be open to the idea that intelligence might show up in ways we never even thought of.
Lots to ponder. That's it for our Deep Docs today, folks. Go have your own thought-provoking conversations, why don't you? Until next time.